everybody, it's Andrew Gaffney with Retail Touchpoints here at the NRF Big Show, and I'm joined now by Ian Hutchinson, who's with Samsung Electronics America. Ian, thanks for joining
me. Andrew, pleasure to meet you.
So we've written a lot about and covered pop-up shops. It's been a big trend, and I was interested, I saw at your exhibit here that you have a new solution for pop-up shops. Can you talk a little bit about how that came about?
Yeah, I can. We looked at the industry and we're trying to figure out what might be missing in terms of somebody that may have a web presence and be used to connecting with consumers with a lot of data, and then what happens in a physical location. And we're looking in stores as well as in pop-ups. And then we decided if we had analytics that could show heat map and tracking and those items around it, and also make the pop-up ready to go. So then we said, well, why don't we do the technology and the pop-up itself as a weekly rental, including full technology support, and also put all the data and analytics in there too. It would be able to let retailers make a much more informed decision on next week, next year, and what they were doing.
So you mentioned to me earlier that there's actually sort of more opportunity to get data out of a pop-up or be more agile around it. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, there's two things. There's data agility and real agility. So if you have a modularized framework with a data and technology platform ready to go, if you're the retailer, you don't have to have people on staff that know those things. You can just call up and say, I want one of those analytical pop-ups dropped in my marketplace with my messaging on it. The other part of the data envelope is there's two sides to pop-up that we see. One would be a sales channel and sales funnel where I have a point of sale and I want to drive that activity. The second part is many pop-ups don't have a point of sale. So at that level, you now have almost no data about who came and went. So if now you can have male and female, what particular age group, what time of day, did they come in pairs, all that kind of information to give you an idea about vibrancy can help inform your next marketing decision.
Now, you're a partner that you're working with on this, so it's a fairly turnkey solution. Can you add more details on that?
Yeah, there's a great partner who understands retail, which is called Barrows Global, and they're part of the WPP marketing network. For us, it was their understanding of that last mile, but also their ability to fulfill. So if you call them and say which location, and I want my message nuance for this thing, it was a logical partner. They've also built their modular framework that would fit all our technology. So we now work together to integrate it. And what that really means is they don't have to worry about the technology. The end-use retailer doesn't have to worry about the fulfillment. And now you can drop a pop-up in any configuration. The second thing they did, which I thought was really smart, is they use their insights into retail to configure 3 basic blocks and to build any store from. So you can do a 5 by 10 up to a 2,000 square feet or more, and it's just the same blocks reoriented. And it could be, I want screens, I don't want screens. I want merchandising, I don't want merchandising. So very, very useful way, and that cuts weeks and weeks and weeks out of the development to implementation time frame that you typically have.
And now this could be applicable for, anybody from a big box retailer, a department store to a CPG potentially that is looking to do some different branding opportunities?
It does, and so at Samsung what we're truly concerned about is creating great experiences for consumers. And in our B2B mobility unit where I work, what we want to do is enable retailers in whatever way we can to help them create those experiences. So if we just break that into maybe a couple of components, if I have let's call it a department store as a category, I might want to create these data-rich environments with displays ready to go to make me a more high-value real estate for merchandisers to come in and out and keep the store fresh, but also then feed them data and myself data on where was the foot traffic, how did that change events. If I'm a consumer packaged goods company, I may want to just put one of my experiences down somewhere to test either a location or an audience or introduce people to things, and I want to be able to pick up the phone and say, we have all our merchandising, now just drop me a pop-up in this particular location. I think also for mall owners it's very interesting because they could also potentially, instead of selling a concrete shell under a short-term lease, they could solve it with a technology shell that would allow to sort of have your brand here and also then have all the data. So then they could offer that short-term occupant not only a great ability to create great experiences, but they could come away going like, okay, here's some other marketing metrics.
Right.
So,
interesting. Now, we were talking about it a little bit earlier. I mean, some of the emerging technology transformation that's going on, things like IoT, are kind of intimidating or daunting for a retailer to tackle, but in this model, it can be a little bit more applicable for them or achievable. Talk about that a little bit.
I think it's more, so Andrew, that's a really good point. So in the early conversations when we were developing this, when you talk to anybody about a whole enterprise change, we want to change all your stores and IoT can help you. I think it's a little bit like saying I should be on a diet. I'm going, yeah, I probably should, right?
Right.
But what you need to be is more practical, like why don't you cut bacon out, or why don't you cut another food category out, and then you can start there.
Yeah.
For me, what it did is it made the conversation very easy. And I found that when we were presenting executives with a pop-up, which effectively is a demilitarized zone, fully supported, doesn't affect continuing operations, it would allow them to experiment. But the unforeseen thing that came out was I found that executives would look at it and go, I completely get it. You've simplified what IoT means because we have a marketing message that's done by demographic. We want to deploy it. Wouldn't it be great to know whether that demographic showed and how they interacted?
Right.
So pop-ups also become, besides being a thing, has become a very useful way to talk about complete store change. And I didn't expect that to occur. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Now, one of the subsets of all of this is data. You talked
Yes.
about, and that's a running theme in your booth, I noticed. To talk a little bit about data as a driver of all of this.
So my background's as an engineer, Andrew, and I just can't imagine making decision-making without data. And so if you have experiences even without a point of sale and you don't have a till receipt, how will you judge success of the campaign? It's hard. So I was looking for anything that might try and emulate in the future. If I was a business leader looking at one of my web properties, I'm going to see all kinds of metrics about number of uniques, how long they stay for, how many pages they click through. Why can't I look at my physical space, my physical real estate, and do the same thing? Look at repeat passengers, when they come back and forth, repeat clients, when they come back and forth, how long do they stay for, what do they do? So we're trying to create a world in which that data is the same, which allows you to make equivalent decisions for
Right.
both areas. And hopefully then that drives better experiences for the consumer. So super interested in that.
What's the reception been like to that messaging? I mean, are retailers on board with that?
I think in the beginning, when people came along, they were intrigued by, okay, Samsung's doing a lot of connected things. Is it fridges? What's the story? And then the minute they got into what it resolved, I found I really didn't have to explain much about it at all. They were finishing my sentences. And the biggest aha I found is we've been using this phrase about we want to bring light to data darkness.
Right.
And they're like, that's it, we're data dark. And then the questions become around how do I?
Right.
And what are the limitations and how do I do it? So it's really interesting too that a lot of this technology is all the technology is current. Some of it's been around for a while. But when you bring it together in something that's really simple and narrow,
Yep.
it allows people, it's a digestible chunk, it allows them to onboard it. And I'm hoping then it's an on-ramp for a wider discussion.
Makes sense.
Otherwise, in a major store, how are you going to get change when each planogram is set for the next year? It's really hard to jump into that cycle.
Yeah, I mean, particularly given that speed and agility are such key parts
Absolutely.
of the conversation today, I think it's a really interesting model.
Yes, thank you.
Well, great. Thank you for stopping by and talking with us today.
Thank you, Andrew. Thanks for the interest. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.